So yesterday there was a laptop up here. I have my laptop. Do you think we need it? I know I think that's who Kim's talking to. In the back. I was like, oh.
They're streaming it live on ESPN as well.
Oh, those lights are bright. Good morning, everyone. Are we right on? Oh, I can really see. Right. Okay. My name is Stacy Nunn. I am the Associate Director of Comprehensive Integration at Chestnut Health Systems. We are a larger behavioral health agency that is located in Illinois. Today, we are going to be talking about a new project we just started in April in collaboration with the St. Clair County Transit District. So very exciting for us. It's been a few months of a lot of learning and a lot of change. So we're going to kind of get started today to talk about each of the agencies that are involved, and then we'll kind of move through what the setup of the project looked like, go into the details, and then towards the end, we'll talk a little bit about the data collection and then take any questions that you guys may have. So we wanted to start out this morning just kind of with an overview of both agencies. Chestnut Health Systems has been around since 1973. We are located predominantly in central and southern Illinois. So we started out as a small substance abuse treatment agency with 2 people. Today we have around 700 employees and we have 9 different locations. What's really exciting is most recently in the last few years, we've actually expanded over into Missouri. So not too far south from here is Hillsborough, Missouri, and we actually have a location there as well. We have 6 primary service lines that we focus on at Chestnut: substance use, prevention, mental health treatment, primary care, housing, and credit counseling. The project you guys are going to hear about today in collaboration with St. Clair County Transit District primarily focuses on our substance use services, our mental health services, and then connection to primary care. We also have a research division that is located up by Chicago called Lighthouse Institute. They do amazing work. They do a lot of grant evaluations and project evaluations. So I definitely wanted to note that as we're kind of moving forward. I wanted to next introduce Ken Sharkey, who's the director of the St. Clair County Transit District. He's going to provide a little background on the transit district, you guys, and then how the project came about. So what was going on that made them reach out and made this partnership develop?
Thank you, Stacey. Yeah, Ken Sharkey, St. Clair County Transit District, the managing director. I've been with the agency a little over 3 years, and I come from a completely different industry, real estate property management. And a lot of it's still, customer service and customer focus. So a lot of crossover skills, and kind of made this job an ideal opportunity for myself and the agency. So when I first came to the district, I really needed to learn the transit ridership, because I was never a transit rider. I was always in my car crossing the river coming over to St. Louis. I live in Illinois. And so I would ride buses and I would ride trains. And one of the things I encountered around when I was riding the Metrolink train is people with, obvious issues, people sleeping on the train, maybe some people with some mental health issues, panhandling, and, just some other riders that are kind of acting out. And, that would all happen during the regular transit when people are trying to get to work, to school, or wherever they need to go. And, mostly I just saw people kind of like turning a blind eye to the riders, similar to like if you're riding in a car and there's somebody standing at a corner, with a sign, asking for assistance. And I thought there needed to be some sort of dialogue between us and the people that maybe are in distress or in need. And the primary focus is for us to build and increase ridership and to maintain ridership to make it attractive. So I kind of had that in the back of my mind when I was first learning about the ridership. And then along came this national dialogue about defunding the police that we've all been hearing about. And in St. Clair County, we're very focused on trying to bring back ridership to Metrolink. And we do have 15 full-time sheriff deputies that staff the Metrolink 10 stops in Illinois, along with some supplemental sheriff deputies that also assist in the commute. But many times the police, don't have the special skills designed and required to be able to interact with the people that need the service. Some of the officers may have that background, but by and large, I would think our officers that are on the system are really focused on, growing out after the more egregious issues that we need to deal with. And I started thinking about, well, we're not going to defund the police. How can we help the police do a better job and the sheriff's deputies do a better job on the system? And then I reached out to our director of mental health in St. Clair County, and I got referred to Chestnut. And then we began a dialogue and we started talking about what we could do. And then in last October, my board authorized $200,000 for a pilot project for a one-year program. And we engaged with Chestnut. It took them a while to staff up because they really wanted to identify and have a system tailor-made for this service that we intended to deliver. So from October to about April, it took a while to get the properties, the people staffed up. And we have Emily here, you may hear from a little bit later today, and she has an associate named Nathan that, ride the system 40 hours a week. And we are also expanding the service by bringing in some more part-time people with Chestnut, as Emily's going to pull back a little bit and try to network and develop more resources in the community to be able to deliver the services for the ridership. So that's kind of how it began. And at this point, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Emily and be able to answer some questions a little later on in the program. Thank you.
So my name is Emily Schweigel. I am the Behavioral Health Outreach Coordinator, but that's a mouthful. So I also respond to the project coordinator. So as Ken had mentioned, there was a cohort of riders who are identified that were demonstrating some problematic behaviors on the trains and on the platforms. And so these issues included riding the train for extended periods of time without a destination, oftentimes without fare. A lot of times these individuals were sleeping on the platforms, sleeping on the trains. There were individuals who were highly symptomatic with mental health conditions. There was individuals using alcohol and drugs on Metro property, being under the influence or in withdrawal from drugs and alcohol, and also panhandling and loitering. So in the fall, we partnered with the St. Clair County Transit Department to come up with a project in order to identify these issues and really try to serve these riders. And so it really takes a village to make a project like this work. So there's a lot of different partnering agencies that are involved in this. So not only is it the county's transit district and Chestnut Health Systems, we also work closely with the county sheriff's department. St. Clair County's sheriff's department has a MetroLink patrol squad. So they are very much present on the platforms, in the parking lots. They're also the ones that respond whenever law enforcement and ambulances are dispatched. We also work very closely with the bi-state security team. So this is TSS, which is, I think it stands for Transit Security Specialist,
Yes.
I believe. Yeah. And the contracted security team G4S. And then we also work closely with the Citizens for Modern Transit, which do a lot of our advertising and marketing. They were the ones who not only placed, but also paid for our ads on all the platforms. They also did the marketing for our events, such as our Overdose Awareness Day that we did last week. So some of the details of the project that Ken had mentioned. So there's a 2-man team on the trains 40 hours a week. And that team is typically myself and my partner, Nathan. We do have a PRN staff of 3 that fills in for us when one of us is not present. So this week I'm at this conference. So Nathan is riding with our PRN staff this week. We ride between the Shiloh Scott Air Force Base stop and then all the way to Laclede, which is the first stop in Missouri. So we're riding the train, we're on the platforms, really trying to identify riders who are displaying some of those problematic behaviors. So if they're sleeping, if they have multiple bags presenting as being unhoused, if they appear to be under the influence, or if they are actively using, or if we are seeing maybe some symptoms of mental health, we try to engage with that individual. As you can see, we do have our ads there as well with our phone numbers. So we are able to have individuals reach out to us as well. Our ads do have a QR code, so if they do not feel comfortable speaking with us, they can go straight to our website and find those services that we offer. So in addition to us riding the trains and engaging with riders, we are assigned a TSS security guard for safety reasons. She is also amazing at helping us connect with riders as well, as she is checking for fare. If an individual doesn't have fare, she usually is asking, what's going on, where are you headed? And then she'll introduce us to that individual as well. We also ride with the St. Clair County Transit District's ambassadors on designated days during the week, with them being very familiar with the bus drivers, train conductors, routes, and common riders. That also helps us become familiar with individuals. So a big part of this project is doing a lot of outreach and building relationships with agencies and organizations in the community. And so that comes down to the shelters, the drop-in centers, food pantries, even local hospitals and treatment agencies outside of Chestnut. Even though we do have an array of services that we provide, we cannot serve all of the riders for all the needs that they need in a timely manner. So having that relationship with all the organizations and agencies in the county is crucial. And then we are able to have flex funds to help engage riders as well. First of all, everybody likes free stuff. So that's number one. Second of all, just being able to offer people some stuff that maybe they need and they don't realize. A bottle of water, some sunscreen, hand sanitizer. And a lot of times that's an excellent icebreaker. So the whole idea of the project is behavioral health outreach. So everything that falls under that umbrella is what we are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And so the services that we are providing individuals is immediate access to primary care, substance use treatment, and mental health treatment, getting them referred and linked up to places to do psychiatric evaluations, detox screenings. We also are able to transport individuals to appointments if needed. We were donated a shuttle bus by the transit district, which has been incredibly helpful. We also have the funds that we can arrange for either an Uber or Lyft ride or provide bus or train tickets as well if needed. We also do crisis response. There have been situations where we've had to respond to a medical issue and then we've had to dispatch for an ambulance. We are also trained in crisis intervention. My partner and I are trained and authorized to do involuntary petitions. So if there is a situation where an individual is highly symptomatic, are a danger to themselves, are in need of hospitalization, and they are not willing to go voluntarily, we are able to fill out that petition so they can receive the services that they need and can be transported to the hospital. Also in the county, we have maybe a handful of shelters, all of which require referrals by the housing hotline. And there is only one drop-in center. So a lot of times when you are seeing somebody who is sleeping on the train or they are riding all day long, it's because they do not have a safe place to stay that night and they are in house. So being able to engage with those individuals, being able to sit down with them, call the county's housing hotline, get that screening done, get them on that wait list to get that process started for that more permanent, stable housing, and then getting them transported to that drop-in center. Or even if they prefer not to stay in the county, they'd rather stay in St. Louis, making the necessary calls to get them into a shelter for a safe place to stay that night. So the goals of the project have really been developed both by the Transit District and Chestnut Health Systems. And so one of the big goals is to diminish the all-day riders on the train. People are not riding the train from the time the train starts running to the time it stops just for fun. There's usually something going on. So being able to engage with those riders, figure out what the issues are, and trying to resolve those issues. So they're not using the train as a safe haven, that they do have a safe place to stay, and they are able to get the services that they are needing. Also diminishing the use of drugs and alcohol on the Metro platforms, also that problematic behavior such as argumentativeness, panhandling, and loitering. Detecting riders with mental health symptoms. Our presence there alone helps out a lot with that, just being able to be proactive. There are individuals you see every single day for 2 months straight, and then you never see them again. There are individuals you don't see for months. One day they pop up, they're there every day for 2 weeks, and then they're gone. So being able to just recognize these individuals, recognize maybe some of their behavior changes, and being able to realize when there's starting to be a pattern occur, and then you can intervene and try to stop that problematic behavior. And then trying to improve that overall experience, not only for the riders, but also the staff at Metro as well. We've talked a lot about just, the overall perspective of Metro and some of the things that have happened, and that's where all that spotlight is being focused on, and we want people to have a good experience. And one of the big goals, especially for Chestnut, is being able to integrate all of the organizations and agencies in the county. There's not a lot of communication amongst everybody. And so like I had said earlier, Chestnut has a lot of services that we can provide, but we cannot serve everybody for all of their needs. So being able to have those open lines of communication, those referral sources, those formal partnerships, and those relationships, so everybody can work together to serve the community the best way that they can. And then another big goal is continuing to find that funding to expand the project. Right now, our team is riding Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And as great as it would be if people's problems only started at 8 a.m. and ended at 4 p.m., that's not the case. So being able to expand the services so we can have more teams on the line in the evenings, on the weekends, so we can really serve riders as much as possible, and then even potentially maybe get onto the bus lines as well. So there's a lot of different organizations and agencies in the county, but there have been a little more than a handful that we have worked really closely with that have really been a saving grace and have been instrumental in making this project the success that it's had so far. So St. Vincent de Paul is very common in the region. As I had mentioned earlier, there are about a handful of shelters, but there's one drop-in center, and that's in East St. Louis, St. Vincent de Paul. And so the drop-in center is open from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Doesn't need a referral. Individuals can go there and have a safe place to stay and sleep. They also serve 3 hot meals a day. They have a thrift store. They'll provide free clothes or clothes at a low cost. Individuals can shower. They can do their laundry. They can get help with an ID. They can do their taxes. There are so many different services there. So they have been a great help when we engage with individuals who are in need of those services and are unhoused. We can transport them down there and they will help them almost immediately. Salvation Army has also recently opened up what they call their sanctuary. So it's a cooling center and they serve a hot meal 3 days out of the week. The last I read and the last I spoke to somebody, their goal is to become very similar to St. Vincent de Paul. So they can also be a drop-in center. The St. Clair County Housing Resource Hotline, most of the counties in the state, and I think mostly in the area, in order to get any kind of assisted housing, you have to go through the hotline. To get any kind of referral to a shelter, you have to go through the housing hotline. So we are on a first name basis with the ladies that work over there. Being able to call them, get somebody on the phone so they can do a screening with this individual and get that process started so they can get on a wait list and begin to get into that stable housing. There's a lot of funds in the county that can help individuals with rental assistance. Sometimes it's first and last month's rent. Sometimes it's multiple months worth of rent. Touche Regional Medical Center has a behavioral health unit. In St. Clair County, there's only one detox and there's only one hospital with a psychiatric unit, and that is Touche Regional Medical Center. We have a lot of partnerships with a lot of different hospitals and agencies outside of the county, but when it comes to needing that immediate assistance quickly, Touche in Centerville is usually our go-to because it's very quick and it's close. Also, we have the Intergovernmental Grants Department. Keeping in mind that we engage with a lot of riders who don't have a lot of quote unquote problems. Sometimes we just make small talk with somebody because they're sitting there and then things come about. And so we have conversations with people a lot of times who will tell you everything's good, but I hate my job. I need a new job. Or I, have a long legal record and I'm having a hard time finding employment. We refer a lot of them to Intergovernmental Grants Department. We did a couple meetings and we did a meeting back in April, and they have a lot of different programs, a lot of job prep, resume prep, job training. They have a lot of different job openings and relationships with different companies in the county. So we make a lot of referrals to them to help people get that employment. And then there's Comprehensive Behavioral Health Systems in East St. Louis. Chestnut Health Systems has a crisis intervention team that serves all of St. Clair County except for East St. Louis. And then that's where Comprehensive Behavioral Health Center comes in. So they've been great. Anytime we are in a situation where we need a little extra support handling somebody who's in a mental health crisis, being able to call them, and they are very quick to respond. And they are very well trained and able to help us either de-escalate situations or make those connections because they have the relationships with those local hospitals and law enforcement.
So next, you guys, since Emily's kind of provided an awesome overview and we're really excited about the project, we've presented just a few times on the project so far, and there's always a lot of follow-up questions. So we added a few slides in, which I'm hoping will clarify a couple more things about what went into the project. So one of the things that we talked about was staff development. We were very fortunate that St. Clair County Transit District and Ken were so patient with the hiring process. We had a lot of candidates. There were people that were coming through that just weren't having the right values when we were doing the interviews. Things weren't going very well. We knew it was so important that our first team of two be very solid, that those are two people that are independent without direct supervision. They're in the community, they're representing everyone involved, all partnering agencies. And so we were very fortunate that we had two internal candidates, one being Emily and then Nathan that she showed you on the slide. And the interesting thing is when we were writing the job descriptions, there was a lot of opinions and thoughts from our management about what those should look like. And when it came down to it, a lot of things that we originally had in place, we went back on. So just to kind of give a little bit of background, Nathan's background, he was a recovery coach for several years at Chestnut Health Systems in our substance use department. Emily has been a clinician in the substance use department for several years. So big, huge career changes for them when they stepped into this role, but it worked. When we were interviewing and going over everything, it just seemed to be that awesome team of two that was going to get it figured out. And so I just kind of wanted to highlight a few things that came about because there was a lot of pre-planning. There was a lot of stuff that came in our first few months. The comprehensive training plan, when you were bringing everybody in, it would have been ideal if everybody would have had the mental health background already, but that's not what happened. And so we spent a lot of time working with different agencies in St. Louis, reaching out to other, agencies. There's not a lot of people doing something similar to this. So we did a lot of time reaching out to maybe those that are doing like a homeless outreach program and seeing what trainings they used. We spent a lot of time with our crisis director and saw what's her team have. And so we kind of came up with a pretty comprehensive training plan. And so it covers a variety of things, everything from outreach to mental health, to substance use, to crisis. In the beginning, you guys had not planned on doing the crisis referrals or, doing the paperwork to admit somebody into the hospital. And then that changed a few months in. We were like, okay, we don't want to have to wait. We want to be able to do this ourselves while we're out there. So the PRN team that she talked about too goes to the exact same training. So everybody should be, able to show up, provide the same services, have that same background, and have the same relationships. Emily has done a phenomenal job of working with the ambassadors that are here today over at the table, and really just making sure that we have that team that needs to exist across departments. So she reaches out a lot. They've done a lot of team building activities, a lot of trainings together, and just that support, because every day looks different for them. It is one of those things where you just don't know what they're going to have each day that they go to the train. It could be a slow day. It could be a day where she's by 12 o'clock, she's already texted me 3 or 4 times with what's going on. Just an FYI, this is what's happening today. We're transporting again. This is going on. So I think that's a huge part of it, you guys. And then we had approved for them, they're involved in reflective supervision. So definitely a behavioral health concept, but they do have someone that they work with off of the train, where they just kind of debrief about how things are going. So that's one of the other things I wanted to throw out there. And then we definitely talked about the extensive outreach and the partnership development. Definitely an overarching goal, you guys, of Chestnut and the counties we serve is to have a really solid system of care, but then to also have the community educated about what that looks like. It's an area that we've been working on in Madison and St. Clair counties, and it's something that this project has definitely helped since it's definitely supporting it. So now we have agencies that have maybe never even come to the table before that are coming to the table to talk about things. So whether it's what they can provide or what they need. So we're able to fill some gaps that we had originally not been able to, just because we have more people talking about what we want this to look like in the long term. One of the other things too, you guys, the data reporting was, we've kind of been all over the place since we started what we really wanted to show the first year. So for those of you guys that have them on your table, that little printout, it's really tiny up here. So we have some handouts for you guys if you want to see what those look like. We worked really closely with Ken the first few months to say, like, what would you like to see? We know what we're out there doing. We're taking lots of observation notes. We're trying to like record every interaction we have, but what do you want to see from us? So we're going to talk a little bit about it on the next slide, but I thought it was good just to kind of show you guys that's what we're right now. That's what we're reporting monthly. Now, may that change over the next few months? Probably. Emily has put together a survey where we're going to try to get pre and post data from clients. That's a hard sell, especially when you can't always find everybody. People don't have reliable contact numbers, but that's something that's important to us, is to try to do a survey when we were first engaging with somebody, and then where are they at in 4 to 8 weeks? What has everything helped? Are they still connected? So those are big things too that we have that are just kind of in the works because the project is so new. Emily and Nathan and their team of PR and team, they're down here on the bottom if you can kind of see everybody. They do a lot of observation notes just about what they're seeing every day, what they're experiencing. We've done a lot of just what are the gaps, what are the challenges, and then just kind of really trying to see what we have in the community that can help meet the needs. And then the monthly reports, that's what we talked about before, that's on the table. Going into just a little bit more detail of what that looks like is we just kind of wanted to share with everybody, April through July, it's been a learning time. So the first few months, when we first started the project, the goal was for Emily and Nathan to just go out and observe. We were like, we're going to give you guys 60 days just to go out and go with the ambassadors. We want you to observe. And that just didn't happen because they were coming across riders with needs. And knowing both of their personalities, they're not going to be like, oh, right now we're just observing. Instead, they were like, okay, what do you need? Like, let's get started. And so the project just kind of took off right away. With that, there's a huge learning curve. So we've been trying to track what the biggest needs are when we come to the riders that they're engaging with. So they've engaged with over 300 riders. 60 people were directly related to services. So whether they were, connected strictly to the crisis department or they went to St. Vincent de Paul that she talked about, they were directly connected to a service that day. Out of those, Emily gave a lot of props. We've been very, very supported by all of the partnering agencies. So everybody from the Metrolink to St. Clair County Transit District, the ability to have a van that's on site that they can use to transport is huge. That's a really, really, really big deal. It makes things so much easier for them. And then obviously some people that just need that bus pass, the train ticket, whatever it may be, having those available as well. Transportation is a huge deal for our, the different clients and the riders getting to where they need to go. So whether that is their job or a medical appointment or an appointment at, for behavioral health services or primary care, that's become another part of this. That's been really, really awesome to see it all come together. Obviously during that time, they had 6 riders that were connected directly with EMS. And then the backpacks and resources that Emily talked about, we thought we were, before we found St. Vincent de Paul, we were like, okay, we're going to need to get towels and all these other things. And then we found a resource in the community that said, if you can get them here, we have that. We would love to provide that. And so it's those kind of networking things where now Emily's been able to focus more over the summer. So things like sunscreen and aloe and water and those little things, and just having a granola bar when you sit down to talk to someone has been a huge just entryway into just to getting to know the riders. And then Narcan, obviously at Chestnut, we just did an overdose awareness day at several different locations. They did one at the St. Clair County Transit District on one of the platforms and had quite a few people. And Emily, we can talk about that in just a minute, but it had a really great turnout, you guys. And one of the things that we were surprised is how many people were interested in learning about how they could get Narcan. So ties into some other projects that we do at Chestnut, but very, very helpful. And over the time that they've had just from coming across riders, they've distributed Narcan to 4 different riders. Since that time, that numbers went up greatly because people know about them now. It's kind of out there. Things are moving along. The next part of this, you guys, that I just want to show is that chart that's over there on the left. Obviously, the majority of what we're seeing is there's a need for housing. So that's when we talked about the partnership with the hotline and getting to know everybody that's there, also knowing the housing sites. So when you're calling and saying, hey, I just had somebody added to the list, they're now on there. This is what, if they're a veteran or if they're male or if they're female, just depending on what if they have children with them, all those different things come into play when trying to figure out what's the right place where they're going to go next. So making those relationships was huge. And then obviously like the food and sack lunch, the drop-ins, so the showers and the meals, all of those are some of the biggest needs. And then next we see the mental health counseling and piece. So as we started looking at the data, it's really just starting to mash up with everything that we've been kind of told before we started the project, what they're seeing when we're out there observing. So at this point, I just kind of wanted to show you guys just a little bit more breakdown of the data. And then I was going to have Emily just really quick. I know we're going to leave some time for questions, but I wanted just to kind of hear some of the basically how the overdose awareness days went, how the partnership building is going, and the different things that she's, kind of had in place that they've been very, very supportive of St. Clair County Transit District of just helping us get the project advertised in the community so people know about it. Because I think those are some of the important things that you're going to start to see with really when we talk about transit is the community notices when you see things like that. So things that are posted that talk about this great event was going on, all these people attended, come see us, come ride the train, come meet some of these different people that are on here doing these great services. Okay, so if you don't mind, I'll have you go ahead and cover that just a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So Chestnut has a department that we refer to as preventions who provides Narcan to a lot of different agencies and organizations in the county. And so part of what we do is when we're out riding the train, we make sure we always have at least 3 boxes of Narcan on us in case we come across a rider who needs Narcan, we can give them some, or if we come across a rider who is in with or an overdose, we can administer that. And so the 31st was Overdose Awareness Day. And so we had asked Ken if we could put up a table and a tent at the Belleville station in St. Clair County, just with, being able to give out Narcan, some information about prescription drop-offs places in the county in both St. Clair and in Madison, and just giving out information about fentanyl testing strips, opioid education, overdose education, really as much information and education as we could. When you engage with riders, asking them those really tough, intrusive questions, people get a little defensive. And a lot of times when you ask somebody, do you need some Narcan or would you like some for you or somebody else? They're usually decline. So being able to be open so they can come and ask us questions and then we could just provide it to them is a little less intimidating. And so we engaged with 40 to 50 individuals that day and distributed 37 boxes of Narcan, which is incredibly successful. And getting that information out, I had reached out to Ken, who had reached out to Kim at CMT, and she got the information out within 24 hours saying, at the Belleville station, Chestnut Health Systems will be there providing information in Narcan. And CMT has really been amazing at getting that information out there anytime we ask. Ken has also been really great at corresponding with our local newspaper, just getting information out there, because I think it's incredibly important that people know that we are there, because it's scary sometimes, calling a treatment provider and saying, hey, I need help. But if you're on the train and you just see somebody and you could just strike up a conversation and then it's more casual, it's less intimidating, just knowing that we are there, knowing that those resources are out there. And there's been plenty of times where we've talked to individuals and they say that everything's fine. And maybe that fourth conversation, they say, what about this? I'm just curious about this. And then that's the door that opens that we can help link them to the services that they needed. So really to make this project successful and really help those riders as much as possible, it's really, like I said, it's taken a village. It's really been a lot of teamwork, and it really could not have been done with all this without all the support that we have gotten. So.
We kind of made this program up as when we started the program up, there's no guidelines or any rules to follow. So we just kind of improvised as we rolled out the program. And integral, we have 2 St. Clair County ambassadors that ride the Metrolink train. We have Don and Willie who are with us here. So we paired them up with Chestnut to help them understand the transit rider. Both Willie and Don are retired Metro bus drivers. So they know the system, they know the ridership really, really well. So we teamed them up with Chestnut when they started the program on April the 6th. And then not too long after we began the program, we had a few little issues that caused me some concerns. And I went to Kevin Scott at Metro, head of security, and they provided some support, not where they're right next to them while they're trying to administer services, but the security was often a distance and there to help if they needed to have any assistance. So many times they're just approaching people cold. I like the way that their attire is. They're just in jeans, very casual, in a t-shirt, no logo, very non-threatening, non-militarized, and they can have a dialogue with people, and especially with the little giveaways they do, and find out, what's going on with you, and see if there's a way we can, assist you. So I do appreciate the ambassadors and Kevin Scott from Metro, and I'm very encouraged that Metro is also, looks like they're going to be taking this program with their Chestnut operation from Jefferson County and expanding it to Metro, which there's 39 stops on the Metrolink system. We have 10. And a lot of the people that we're interacting with are also on the Missouri side. So I think it's a good program that Metro is going to be taking over this program. And this pilot project, I'll be going to my board probably a little later this fall and asking for some additional resources based on the early success we have, and try to expand the service and maybe catch some of the hours of the operation on the train where we currently don't have coverage. So with that, I'll go ahead and I don't know if you want to open up for questions, and if there's any questions from the audience here, and we'll be around afterwards if you want to just come up and talk to us individually as well.
I was just wondering, since we have two people who were obviously not trained in mental health, what type of training did you offer them to engage with these?
Are you talking about our two ambassadors? Basically, they were just going along with the Chestnut professionals and just letting them know about the ridership and what to experience, and just so they weren't thrown out cold by themselves with no security presence. And I wasn't a transit rider until I came to work at the district, and I'm assuming the Chestnuts weren't transit riders either. So they really needed to learn the system. And what better way to have them learn the system than when put them with some experienced people that know the transit ridership in the St. Louis metropolitan area. So right now they're with them maybe just one day a week, not even the full day, just part of the day. We do have them doing some other duties because they've seemed to establish themselves, and they're as familiar with the ridership on the Metrolink system as our ambassadors are. So. Very good. Ready? Kevin, go ahead. You can come on up and use the mic if you like to, Kevin.
Yesterday, we had a conversation in this room when we first started about de-escalation. And we gave a number of different examples. The three organizations that were here, including this program that's taking place on the St. Clair County side. But the purpose that the ambassadors serve is really a community-based or customer-based approach. Nobody knows the system and the ridership like they do. And they've built relationships having been out there day in and day out. And the same would be true for our transit security specialists that we use with the team as well. So we have a security role with the team from the transit security side, but the ambassadors know intimately the ridership, how things work on the system, and are the epitome of the customer-based approach that we talked about yesterday.
Is there any other questions? Sorry, the lights are so bright. I can't really see. Go ahead.
Yeah, so in St. Clair County, we've got like 22 townships or 6 townships that aren't part of our district, and they happen to be in the most rural part of St. Clair County. So we don't have service in those areas. But Jim with Chestnut, I think is based in Hillsborough in Jefferson County, right? So has some rural footprint that you serve as well?
Yeah.
You can come on up, Jim, if you like.
And we are rural, we're St. Louis Metro, but a lot of Jefferson County is familiar with it is almost urban, it's right from St. Louis County border, and then down a little further southwest is in Hillsborough rural, and they have transportation issues there. So I just mentioned to Kevin, that's a great question, because we're in infancy of this project, even figuring out ways to get a ridership or a bus rider to come to training or do something virtually in terms of de-escalation techniques and engagement. I think there's a lot of possibilities there. I was just thinking selfishly for my project in Missouri, but so beyond that, and Stacy and Emily could probably talk a little about the training that we give for the.
Most definitely. Jim makes a good point. So we have another grant at Chestnut that focuses on our rural counties. Obviously, one of the things we hear out there a lot is there just isn't transportation. So we're looking a lot outside of our realm of what can we do to find transportation for people to get to treatment. And then what we've focused a lot on, we're very fortunate at Chestnut. We also have a very large prevention education department. So one of the things that we've been working a lot is basically just training the community in general and identifying different agencies that would be interested in training their staff and their employees on things that could be as simple as, a mental health first aid course that's 8 hours, to things that are just very, very specific to the agency. So I think it's something, maybe after this, if you want to stick around just for a moment, we could talk about some of the things we've suggested for some of our rural counties that we work with. And I don't know population size, we can kind of look at it and stuff. But I think there's great ideas out there. I think a lot of that just comes with whoever is the management of those agencies, the buy-in there. We've definitely presented our services and offered to train and said, like, we have stigma reduction and we have all these other great things. And people are like, we don't have time. Or, once COVID hit, we just don't, we don't have any time to put that into ours. And so I think maybe just even trying to connect with the different behavioral health agencies in the rural counties to see what they would suggest and what they have available is usually a good start too. So something we can definitely look at more, but it is something we have the same issues with all the rural counties we work with as well.
Things like that. I was going to call you that.
Yeah, so what they do on a daily basis has an overall impact on. Okay. So we monitor the rate of incidents on Metro quarterly, corresponding to the calendar quarter. And we're able to show mitigation. So the majority of what we deal with on the health system.
This? What do you need? Take a look. These lights are there was a guy that was walking around. When we began this program, I know we probably, when I talked to our director of our mental health board in St. Clair County, he basically said there's going to be people you can't reach. And I think Emily and Nathan have interacted with people that don't want to be bothered. They don't want to have a dialogue. And then the director also told me, he says, you might be able to make a lot of progress with an individual, but at some point in time, sometimes, they'll regress and go back to their previous pattern. So when we began this program, if we can maybe affect 20, 30 or 40% and in a positive change, I'm going to call that a win. We're not going to be able to solve all the issues. It's not practical. But if we can affect and positively change and help 20 or 30 or 40% of the riders that are in distress or in need, and then also help maybe to attract other riders that might be deterred from riding the same car with some of the people that are on the train, they just don't feel comfortable. One of the early discussions I had with one of the executives on the Metrolink train, he basically says, can you imagine a housekeeper, let's say at Scott Shiloh Station, you're going to work at a hotel, and then she's entering a car with a carload of people that are sleeping on the train. She needs that job and she needs to get to that job, and this is the way to get there, but she may be detracted from riding the train because, this perceived threat that she doesn't feel comfortable in riding the train. So these are some of the things that we're trying to address. In addition to that, we have a 5.5 mile extension to our Metrolink system out to Mid-America Airport in, roughly $100 million plus endeavor, which is going to come online in 2024. So we have to make sure we have a system that people can rely on, they feel very, very comfortable on when we're making this investment in transit in St. Clair County, that they'll want to be able to use that extra 5.5 miles of track that we're putting there. So these are all things that we're trying to do to lay the groundwork to be able to make that a more enticing environment for people to ride transit.
I was just going to call out Stacy Emily. Last week, they presented to a national group. They presented to a national group of mental health CEOs and executive directors. And the big question that was asked, and I thought they did a brilliant job, so I was just going to ask you to do it again. The mental health professionals asked, and this is a different audience here, is how does and Ken referenced it a little bit, how do you work with the security and the mental health piece, and so folks aren't intimidated? How do you connect with that? Is that a deterrent? Do you work with it? Does it work well? But just that security and that mental health piece, tag teaming it together, which I think is brilliant. How do you approach that potential client in need?
So we are assigned a TSS guard who she's with us 40 hours a week, with the exception of like the days that she has training or she's on vacation. She does have a history of being a guard in a psychiatric hospital. So she is very familiar with mental health. And we've really, it was a learning curve, but we have learned how to work together where she is always nearby, but usually about 20 feet away or 10 to 20 feet away. So she is not right there unless there is a safety threat. The challenge always comes if we have to dispatch an ambulance. There's usually then you have sheriffs, local law enforcement, G4S, TSS, paramedics arrive. And so just making sure that we have that open line of communication and we have those relationships with everybody. So we all kind of understand where everybody's role is, because that can be incredibly intimidating for somebody, especially if they are in a mental health crisis. So this has really been part of the whole learning experience and having that relationship with everybody and everybody learning what their roles are. And then everybody also being very familiar with the de-escalation skills and then being very informed with trauma-informed care.
The other thing that's important from the security component is with our transit security specialist that's embedded in the team or with the team, is it's the same person, because we want that person to assimilate into that team and that person take ownership into that effort. So we don't change those people around. And when we expand to the Missouri side, we're going to focus on initially 2 major transit centers where we have light rail and bus feed. So we can affect the customer base on both modes of transportation. And we're going to follow the same business model here where we embed transit security specialists with those teams and dedicate those individuals so that they get to know the team from Chestnut, and they take ownership in the process as well. And they're a complement and not a hindrance.
Do you have any other questions? I think in closing, I think one of the things that's important is Jim Walsh is here. He spoke a few times. He is our Director of Business Development at Chestnut. is the connections that we've made. So we were very fortunate. He happened to go to Kansas City, ended up meeting another group of behavioral health in agencies and transit, agencies that were partnering together. Does the project look exactly the same? Absolutely not. But when we got on the call with their team, it was a learning experience. So I just really encourage everybody, we put our contact information up here. If it's something where you are trying to roll out something similar, or even something that just deals with, behavioral health services and the transit, definitely please reach out, because I feel like a lot of people are starting to take a different look at things now. And there's going to be a huge learning curve for everybody. But I think the idea of sharing and not having everybody try to, reinvent the wheel themselves is a huge, huge thing right now. So just, them connecting a month ago and just setting up monthly meetings. Theirs is more around bus stops and, being on the bus. Ours is definitely right now on the trains. That's our main focus. But some of the interactions and the trainings and the skills, all of that was the same. So when we put everybody together and their little Zoom boxes and we were all sharing ideas, a lot of great things came out of those conversations. So I just really encourage everybody, if it is something that's on your radar or something that you guys think, even if it looks a little different than what this does, please reach out, because I think, everybody sharing all this information is huge to making this really successful and not have it just in one location. I think, things like this that are already seeing great success, it would be nice to see it kind of rolled out across the Midwest and different places all around the same time. So everybody's kind of, identifying things and working together as we kind of move forward. Is there anything else that you have any questions?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody in the room's from the Kansas City Transit, but I think they're starting a program, and you've had a dialogue with the agency that's assisting them. So I don't know if there's any input or anybody has any comments or anything they want to add to the conversation on what you're doing in your agency. So I know they're in attendance, but I don't know if they're in this session here. So. All right, I guess not. All right. Very good. Any other questions? All right, we'll hang out here a little bit. If anybody has any questions, want to do a little one-on-one, we'll be available up here as well. Thank you. Yes. Okay.